Okay. All right. So firstly, I just want to say thank you for making the time and a huge welcome to this first grant writing workshop that we've ever hosted as the Ingrained Foundation. I'm really happy to be here today. My name's Jodie Littlewood, and I'm running the day-to-day operations of the Ingrained Foundation at the moment, which I'm absolutely loving. I'm gently caretaking that role for Jasmine Daly, who many of you are probably familiar with, who's enjoying some family time with her new baby and her existing little one. So they're enjoying some great times at the moment. In terms of Ingrained, you probably know a little bit about us already. We're a foundation that's been operating for around about 6 years. And so far, we have been able to walk alongside some amazing organisations. And the way that we've been able to do that is by providing financial funding to the amazing work that's happening in the community. So far, I think we've put back about $2.8 million into the community over those last 6 years with so many amazing organisations like yourselves. We've been very much focused on grassroots community organisations and very much about finding that sweet spot between social and environmental well-being so that we can really work together to build and sustain a thriving Northern Rivers community that is regenerative in nature. So I really love what we stand for at Ingrained, and I really love the people that we get to work with because of that. So thank you for all that you're doing in the community already. With regards to the grant writing workshop, it is the first time that we're offering this, and I'm really excited to welcome Natalie Woods here today, who's going to be delivering that workshop for us. One of the things that we really notice at this point in time when our grant applications are open is that the quality of the application really varies depending on the maturity of the organisation and the resources that that organisation has to spend on grant writing and grant writing capabilities. So we wanted to make that more accessible for all. And we really see the grant application, whether it be with us, with Ingrained, or with another funding body, as your time to shine. It is absolutely the moment that you have to tell everything you can about your project and do that in the best possible light. With the hope that it leads to the most successful outcome for you. It's often the only chance you get to talk directly to funding bodies, so we want to make sure that you've got the skills available to you to be able to write a really good quality grant, whether it's to submit it to us or to submit it to somebody else. So today is really about beginners grant writing in general. And I think what you'll learn with Nat today, you'll be able to take into any grant writing application. If you've got any questions that are specific to the Ingrained grants process, I'm happy to stay on the line afterwards and answer any of those specific questions for you, or we can certainly tee up a time to have a conversation later on. So I want to welcome Natalie Woods. We're really excited to have her with us today. She has a wealth of experience in not-for-profit government policy making, and she is no stranger to grant writing. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I have read some of her grant writing expertise. And so she's a great partner for the Ingrained Foundation, and you're in excellent hands with her today. So before handing over to Nat, I just wanted to acknowledge where we met you from today. Nat and I are on the beautiful Bundjalung land. We're so lucky to have a fantastic office at Ingrained that's firmly placed on this unceded land. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and thank them for the ongoing custodianship of this beautiful land, which we get to live, work and play on. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nat. And actually, I've got one question for you, probably two questions for you before I do that, just so that I've got a bit of a sense of things. If you could be so kind as to answer the first question being, how many grants have you written to date? So we've got a sense of how much experience you're bringing into this conversation. If you can just type it in the chat box, it might be none, it might be 20 or anything in between. We just want to get a bit of a sense of who's in the room. And then I've got one other question once you've had a chance to pop that into the chat. Awesome. Some really good mixed. Awesome. Fantastic.
Hold on.
This is perfect. Brilliant. Perfect. Then I think this is a...
Hold on. There we go.
Lots. Yes. Hi, Anne. I can see you there now. You've just popped up in the bottom of my screen. Hi. I'm sure you'll be able to contribute plenty along the way too, Anne, having done lots of grants in the past. Beautiful. So if then you... Awesome. Thanks, Christian. If you were to think about your confidence in writing a grant application on a scale of 0 to 5, how confident are you in your grant writing? 0 is not confident at all, and 5 is I'm smashing it. That's awesome. Thank you. Excellent. All right. That's great. It starts to give us a little bit of a sense of things. Fantastic. All right. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to pop myself on mute. I'm going to hand over to Nat, which is funny. She's literally sitting beside me. So we sort of like, hi. We're at the beautiful Ingrained offices here. So I'm going to jump onto mute and welcome Nat to the floor. Thanks, Nat.
Thanks, Jodie. Hi, everyone. Lovely. It's nice to have a small group, I think. I think we'll be able to hopefully get out of the chat box and just talk to each other with our voices a bit, which will be a bit more interactive and a bit funner for me than just talking at a screen. I'm just going to share my screen. See how we do this. Okay. Does that show up for everyone okay? That look all right? Cool. Okay, so we're going to focus on grant writing skills for beginners today, and it looks like most of you are at that stage. If you're a bit more advanced, then hopefully there's still some things in here that will be useful for you. I'll start with a bit about me. I've had quite a bit of experience in grant writing, starting out in the federal government, in the Department of Education, on the other side, actually assessing grants. So I have that perspective of being in a grants program and having hundreds of grant applications to skim through, and what made it really easy for me to tick off whether a project was meeting the department's funding priorities or not. I've also run my own not-for-profit and secured a lot of grant funding for that, and now I work freelance writing grants for local organisations as well. So hopefully I can pass on some good tips and some wisdom. But one thing I really wanted to emphasise is, even though that might sound like some good experience, is that actually often the best person to write about your project is you. And you don't need to be an experienced writer. You don't need to have worked in grants programs. You don't need to have even written a lot of grants, because you know your project and the issue back to front, and you're the best person to convey the issue to the funders and convince them that your project is worthy of this money, and that you deserve it, and you're going to create some great impact with it. I wanted to just ask a quick question, and if anyone feels confident, or put it in the chat box if you prefer not to speak, but what do you find most challenging about grant writing? Or if you haven't written any yet, what makes you so nervous, or makes you nervous about applying for grants, just to gauge where everyone's at? Would anyone like to share? Or you can pop it in the chat box if you like.
Yeah, I'll share. My name's Kim. I think the scariest thing is like the wording or like trying to
No
portray.
takers?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jeffy. For me, it's just because it's
Jeffy?
a long time.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to just unmute yourself? Sorry, Jeffy.
I thought I was unmuted. Maybe
Just
it's
on the top, the little microphone.
I'm not sure if
picture.
you've got a problem with your
Maybe I
sound, Nat.
It might be my. It might be my.
Oh, it might not be working.
Yeah.
Maybe pop it into the
I'll
chat
pop
box.
it into the
Might be having
chat.
some issues in the
Nat, we can hear everyone, and Kim also went first. Did you hear her? I think she's having. Jody, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, sorry. That was mine. Okay, so Jeffy, do you mind repeating what you're saying?
No, that's fine. I was just saying it's been a while since I've written grants. I've written quite a few in the past when I was working, but this is a whole new system for me because I'm applying more to foundations for not-for-profit things, whereas in the past it was to, Department of Health and Ageing or New South Wales HAC or something like that. That was comparatively easy, but I find applying to the not-for-profit things a little bit more fuzzy, a bit more touchy-feely, and therefore a little bit more difficult.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Deb Collins has said how long they take to write and how often their funds, how often the funds are so limited. Yes, so it's quite competitive. Anyone else would like to share?
I think it just takes a while. Like I've been doing it for a while, and initially I couldn't get it in the word count, and now I'm finding I don't have enough in the word count. So you learn to be succinct, but you also, what are they looking for? It does change and move a lot, and particularly in the philanthropic area as well. But yeah, I guess I would say, it's probably better. What I've learned over time is to really read it well before you start writing answers. Because otherwise I'm thinking one thing and the questions are asking something else.
Yes, and we're definitely going to touch on that about how to prepare. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Anne, that the first step is to really look at what the funder is wanting to fund and whether you fit into that. Great. So. Oh, yes. Yeah. Sorry, we're just sorting out the sound issue. Okay, so today's, but if I turn mine up, then you won't hear the feedback of me.
If you turn your speaker off but leave your mic on,
oh, okay, yeah.
you'll be able to hear everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you hear me through yours.
True.
I'll put mine on. Sorry. We're having the funny thing of sitting in the room next to each other. I think we've got it sorted. Okay, so today we're going to run through the 3 main stages of writing a grant, which Anne mentioned and preempted. Starts a lot first with planning, planning the project that you want to deliver, planning how much money you need, and really figuring out and getting a sense of what grants are available and which ones you want to apply for and mapping that out. Then we'll go into talking about writing and how best to frame your responses and to really speak to what the funders are wanting to fund. And then we'll get into the tail end of the process, which is reviewing your application and really just making sure before you hit submit that you're putting the best application forward. So when we want to plan, before we even go looking for grants, it's really important to map out your project and to know all the information so that you can easily have it on hand to put it into any grant application for any funder. So think, why is your project important? What is the need or the issue that you're trying to address? what you will do, the activities, and why that's the best approach to address the need. How you're going to deliver your project, breaking down the steps and who needs to be involved and when, what are the key activities you'll deliver, and then thinking about the impact you want to make and the outcomes that you want to see as a result of your project. And I think also another great one to think about at this stage is why you're the best people for the job. It's almost like a job interview where you want to pitch yourself as the best organization to deliver this project and address that need. And it's good to think about that early, and also maybe even prepare bios of your organization and your key people, just in case you need to put that forward as well. At this stage, it's good to work out how much money you'll need. So create a clear budget, include all the costs, staff wages, admin, project costs, also thinking about how much time and resources you'll need to report on any projects that you deliver and get funded. And also think about what sort of in-kind or donated time and cash or goods and services that you can secure and contribute to the project too, because funders really look on that really favorably. And I think it's good to do your budget early in the process before you start looking for grants, because sometimes you can see what grants are available and try, and we'll talk about this later, but you sort of see, oh, there's 10 grand available here or 20 grand available there, and you try and squeeze your project in to fit that funding opportunity. Whereas I think it's great to figure out how much it's actually going to cost you before you get, I guess, swayed by what's available out there. And then it's really compelling in your applications to back up everything you're saying with research and statistics. You want to provide evidence to prove that, firstly, that there's a need for your project, and particular in your local area where you're planning to deliver your project. And then also evidence to support that your approach is the best approach for that project. So say if you're a mental health organization, you want to prove that there is a mental health issue in your local region, and then you want to provide evidence that says sort of research proves that walking programs in regional areas can have a positive impact on community mental health. That those are the two things. You want to prove that there is the problem, and also that your approach has been proven to create positive impact for that program. You can also look at local community plans or policies to support your approach. So is this a priority area for your council or local government? Has the federal government committed a lot of funding to this specific problem? And just to show that other people besides yourself are also looking at this as something that needs to be addressed. It's also a good time in early on to request letters of support to show community support. So what partners or collaborators can provide a letter or a letter of reference or recommendation to show that they support their project, or that maybe they're going to be involved. And it also, if you've delivered projects previously, it helps give you that that backing to say that you have been successful in the past of delivering successful and effective projects. Often local councils, most of them, I know Byron and Lismore both have a form on their websites to request a letter of support from council. You just need to be aware of the lead times. It's often about a 2 to 3 week turnaround. So if you want to get one of those, I would seek that out quite early. And then you also want to think about whether you need to secure an auspicing organisation if you don't have tax deductible gift recipient status, which some of the grants require and others don't. So we might just start off with a quick writing activity just to help nut out the what, the why, the what you're going to do, the how, and what impact you're going to create. So I've got a little sort of fill in the blanks activity here. Before we start, I'll just show you one that I've done already. So we've got the Young Happy Minds project addresses the need for locally based regular mental health programs targeted at teens aged 12 to 18 years. So this just clearly says in one line why the project is needed and for who. This project is important because in the Northern Rivers, 80% of teens report depression or anxiety, and you can include your source. So that's just a quick one line of evidence. Through weekly afternoon activities and held over a 6-month period, the project will, so we've got what you're going to be doing. The project will reduce levels of mental health, reduce social isolation, and increase knowledge of mental health tools and resources. So we've got the what we're going to do and the impact or result it's going to have. And this last one is really speaks to why you specifically, as opposed to another organisation, should receive the funding. So as a Northern Rivers based organisation, we are best placed to deliver this project. Our team includes doctors, psychologists and nurses who want to use their skills to support local teens. So I think that's a nice one to include early on in an application to really put your best foot forward. So I'll go back to this page. And if you just want to, I guess in your notes, or you can either handwrite it, just start jotting down, filling in those blanks, and I'll give you some time to do that. Yeah. Let's give you another minute or so. How did we all go? I know it's a bit speedy. Does anyone feel confident enough to share what they wrote, even if you only got through the first couple of lines? Or you can even try.
I'd be happy to. I can know what I've written into the chat.
Great.
Get your feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Carice.
It's very quick, obviously, but
Yes. Yeah.
so this is, oh, it's very small points there, but maybe.
See if we can. Oh, yeah, we can click it. Okay.
Okay.
Do you want me to read it out?
Sure.
I'll read it out for everyone. So I don't know if they can see it actually. So the project addresses the need for thinking and acting regeneratively in the face of potential climate impacts that will impact the landscape and infrastructure of the local community of Pottsville Tweed Coastal Community. This project is important because the community is increasingly vulnerable to climate impacts, sea level rise, storms, surge, flooding, and fires. Through a series of workshops, the community will come together to explore what resilience means in the face of potential impacts of climate. It will enable people to start thinking in terms of the resilience of the whole living system, social and natural, and look at what regeneration. Then obviously I cut you off, sorry.
Ran out of time, yeah.
Yeah, this is a great start. I think some great things to put in there. I guess in the second line where you're talking about the increased vulnerability to climate impacts, I would see if you could find maybe a local council or a state government or a statistic from somewhere that sort of points to the increase in these events or the probability of increase of these events. You could also
I've got something like the climate maps or something which show the areas which could suffer inundation, etc., by 2100. So there is data out there that supports that, which I felt was important to include, and that's what you're saying.
Yes, yeah, I would just pick the strongest ones of that and pop it in.
Yep.
Then I think where you say through a series of workshops, be a bit more specific in this opening line about how many workshops and maybe what they will what the workshops will contain specifically. And then maybe if you had space in the word limit, maybe speak to who you are as an organization and why you're coming to it.
Yep.
Whether you're, SES volunteers or whatever it is, or just concerned local people coming together. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else like to share?
I will give it a go.
Great.
So for the first one, I've got the Ranger program addresses the need for Arakwal people to take care of country.
Perfect.
This project is important because Arakwal people want to take care of their native tidal lands and waters. Through land care and management, the project will have Arakwal people working on country which fulfills their native title rights and responsibilities. Yeah, that's as far as I got. I wanted to add more in there, but yeah.
Perfect. I think, if you could find a short statistic around I think there are government things around caring for country and, you know, the improved impacts for both community members and for country. You could put that in the second line. That would really strengthen it. And then obviously for the last one, number 4, you could say that it's an Indigenous-led lead with that, so that they really know that this is coming from the native title holders, because that's obviously really important when the funders are looking at anything First Nations. But yeah, that's great, really clear. And I had a good, clear understanding of what you were doing right from those little, the little snapshot you gave me. Great. Anyone, any last one, or shall we keep going on? Maybe we'll keep going. So that just helps you once you do, if you do that first up when you're really starting to plan your project, it helps you get really clear on what you're trying to do. And then you have the base wording to then apply it to each of the applications as you complete them. The next step when you're planning is, it's really good idea just to have all of your organization info ready in a folder, so you're not chasing any attachments last minute. So things like certificates of registration, ABN, proof of DGR status, or your letter from the auspicing organization. Sometimes you'll be asked to include an insurance certificate if you have one. And then financial statements are a good one to have on hand. And then even just a organization, short, like 100-word, 50 to 100-word organization, who you are and what your vision or mission is. Also a good idea to create a grants tracking document. I do this just in a spreadsheet, or you can just have a list. So when you're out researching for what grants are available, you can put them in the order that you want to apply for them, and make sure that you can plan ahead and give yourself enough time to apply. Obviously, sometimes you come across a grants program last minute and see that it's due in the next few days, but if you can be across them early, and then gives you an idea of what's available and what you can apply for in advance, and also helps you gather whatever supporting documents that they each need, because they do vary a bit. Just a tip, if you're not aware, most of the local councils do offer free subsidised access to the Grant Guru grant database. So if you go into the Byron Shire Council website or the Lismore or Tweed Council websites and search for Grant Finder, it should come up. And then you can register, you can search through the database for free, and you can also sign up for email notifications for any grants that are relevant for you. So you can put in there check boxes for whether it's whether you're interested in arts funding or environmental sustainability funding and things like that. And so you'll get targeted emails. I think every day they send it through. So that's a really easy way to know what's available and what's coming up without having to trawl the internet for hours and hours. Okay, so that's the end of the planning segment. So we've mapped out the project. You've really clearly nutted out the why and the need, how you're going to address the need, what you're going to do, what outcome you're going to achieve, and why you're the best person to deliver this work. You've got all your evidence and your support and your documents, and you've got a document that is noting down all the applications that you want to apply for. Was there any questions from that little segment, our first part of the process? Feel free to ask it in the chat box or with your voice. Okay, we'll keep going. So the next part is probably why you're all here, for the writing. but we're not going to write yet. We're going first, once you decide which grant application you want to apply for, and it's coming up and it's due soon, the best thing to start with is to first download the funding program guidelines and just see what they're looking to fund. Double check that your project is eligible for the grant. Will you need an auspicing organisation? Look at what the key focus, funding focus outcomes the program is hoping to deliver. What are they trying to achieve with the funding, and does your project align with that? And then read through the application form as well, just so you're across what information they need, how many selection criteria questions you need to respond to, so how much time will you need to allocate, and also what sort of information are the questions asking for. Sometimes they'll ask really specifically, what's the evidence you can provide of the need? Sometimes there'll be information on team members, like bios and CVs that you need to include. Particularly the government ones, you may need to, they may have templates that you need to fill out as well for things like budget and program activities and milestones. So just have a look through all those so you sort of know what the job is laying ahead of you. And then start drafting your responses. It's best to do this in a Word or Google document, so you can draft it. Helps, you can work together with other team members, and it reduces the risk of losing any work. All of the grant portals can be a bit glitchy, so you don't want to run the risk of getting halfway through and then it timing out and logging you out and you've lost all of your great work. So once you've got all the questions that you need to answer, just jot down dot points and then expand and add a bit more detail. It's really important to imagine that the person reading the application has never heard about this issue before, even if you feel like it's quite obvious. Just have that in mind, because even though you know your project really well and your issue really well, someone may have never heard of it before. Be concise and to the point. You don't need to show that you know that you're a great writer. It's really just about listing out and making it really easy for the assessors to tick those boxes. And with that, don't be afraid to use dot points. That's absolutely fine. It makes it really easy for the assessors to go through and see what you're trying to do, whether that's listing out the activities in dot points or the outcomes. For example, so we've got a question which I may have taken from Ingrained, actually. Define the need or issue the initiative will address. And so here in the blue, I've taken the first 2 sentences from that work we did earlier. The project addresses the need for locally based health programs, and in the Northern Rivers, 80% of teens report experiencing depression or anxiety. So we've got that key top line, and then I've just added some more detail below it because I know this issue so well. So I've got lots of evidence to prove that this is a big issue in my local community. In this one, you also see that I've got multiple sources that I've provided evidence from. So we've got the Australian government report statistic up the top, and then I've also gone on to cite a statistic from a local organisation. According to Resilient Lismore, 25% of the flood impacted families include teenage children. And then I've also gone and referenced that Lismore and Tweed councils have announced that supporting teens is a key priority for the next 5 years. Really bringing it down from that government to that local level to prove that this is both an issue that's being looked at from that grassroots, but also that top level government as well. And then lastly, I've also noted that through our community consultation, we've spoken with a number of local health organisations, etc., so that you can put in there your own findings as a local organisation. And that was really a good way to show that you've been on the ground and you've been talking to people and you know what the situation is and what's needed. And then you can see that I've just done the exactly same response, but presented it with dot points, which if you're happier with that, that's totally fine to do. I've just added at the top that we know this is an issue because, and then listed all the evidence out. That's totally fine. People don't feel that you have to write it all in paragraphs. Dot points are a great way to get your project across the line. The next point, which Anne sort of mentioned right at the beginning, is use words from the guidelines. So go back over to your notes from when you first looked at the grant writing program and look at what words they use. So this is a really good way for assessors to be able to quickly tick the boxes and go, oh, yep, they meet this funding requirement. They do this, they do this, they do this. So look at what's the key priority of the overall funding program. Is it to reduce social isolation of elderly people or increase the availability of mental health resources? Whatever it is, try and I guess copy the wording that they use and use their words and weave that into your responses. For example, here we've got a funding program that seeks to increase social connection between community members and increase knowledge and usage of mental health tools and resources. So if you look, this is the same Young Happy Minds project example that we've made up. The original, I've just taken it and tweaked it a bit. So instead of local, I'm saying regional to reflect their wording. In my original, I said reduce social isolation, but I can see that in their program funding outcomes, they're looking at increasing social connection, which is the same thing. So I've replaced reduce social isolation with increased social connection. And I've also just added in that we've run the last line, participants in the pilot program reported feeling more connected, made new friends, and were more confident to seek help when needed. So I've referenced in that we have run this project before, we've piloted it, and this is a handy spot for you to sort of put in some testimonials from past participants to show that you meet that funding objective as well. So you're always sort of looking for those little spots that you can further demonstrate your expertise in this area. So let's try one of the ingrained questions. This one's a bit, can be a bit trickier perhaps. It's one of the last questions in the application, and it's around, they're really asking you directly to link your project to their theory of change. So they've given you their 4 impact areas: community, capacity building, ecological resilience, social cohesion, and systems change and social innovation. Please explain how your initiative will have a positive and enduring impact in one of these areas. So if we just look at the question in the bold and the 4 impact areas, it gives us a little bit of information, but doesn't really tell us what they mean by each of those 4 areas. But if we go on their website, which is the orange box here, they give you a little bit more wording to work with, and sort of tells you a little bit more about what they're looking for under each of those pillars. I'll just show you before we start writing, I'll show you one example. So here's another imaginary project I've made up. But we can say that the Regenerative Floodplains Project aligns with the ecological and resilience and climate action funding pillar. And then I've just listed out the key ways that the project aligns in dot points to make it easier, and just using the words they've used. So revitalizing and regenerating, increasing resilience, and increasing community education, just so it's really hitting each of those key things that they're asking for. And then in adding at the bottom that in the long term, what the long-term impacts of the project will be. So if we go back, just down the bottom, I've given you a prompt to write your own. So this project aligns with Ingrained's impact area of, insert which of the 4 impact areas, and will have positive and enduring impact by, and just list out maybe 2 or 3 dot points, trying to weave their wording into your responses and your impact. You'll note that I've started this by just replicating what they've asked for. So the question says, explain how your initiative will have positive enduring impact. And I've really just reworded their question so that it's really clear. This project aligns with the impact area of and will have positive and enduring impact by. It's a really handy way when you're writing your responses to remind yourself, okay, this is what they're asking and this is what I'm responding to. And when the assessor's reading it, they can really clearly say, oh yeah, okay, they have answered this question. So I'll give you some time to work on that. Even if you just do 1 dot point, that's great.
So can I just ask, if you basically project hits all of those, would you just kind of focus on one, but then because you've only got 300 words, and then just say that it also touches into X, Y, Z, or would you try and cover them all?
See how you go with the wording. I would probably say that, I would say this project aligns with all of Ingrained's key impact areas. And you could do 4 dot points and a reason for why it aligns to each one. Or if you felt that it really aligned with 2 of them more strongly than the other 2, you could focus on just the top 2 and then just note that it also aligns with the other ones as well.
I might just jump in. Yeah. I might just jump in on that one because I'm thinking about the way that they actually get assessed in the end. And so with the Ingrained, I think it's a great idea to have, as Nat said, that kind of it aligns in these 4 ways, but where we see the real strength, I would focus on one.
Okay.
And people tend to find that they do have this really kind of overarching, it is a social cohesion initiative, and, at 80% and at the other 20% is, these other 4 areas. So I would go hard on the one that you see that really direct connection.
Great, Jo. Thank you.
Great question. All right, so I'll give you 5 minutes or so and have a crack and see how you go with those. Again, it's not much time, so just do what you can in the I'll just give you one more minute. Okay, would anyone like to share what they wrote? Not much time, sorry.
I'm happy to again.
Yeah.
It's great to get feedback. So here's what I wrote, and it's very, very quick. So obviously limited, but
Okay. All right, so we've got this project will align with all 4 of Ingrained's impact areas. Its core strength will be in enabling the community to be proactive in building resilience through regeneration by supporting the community to generate innovative solutions to the systemic challenges it is facing in the coming years. Yeah, that's great.
so it's hitting 3 and 4, trying to hit 3 and 4. But,
yes.
Yeah.
Great. I would add to that first line and say it'll align with all 4 of Ingrained's impact areas, in particular, the number 3 and 4, the social cohesion and the systems change. So really just highlight which ones you're talking about. And then you've done a great job of starting to bring in the words that they're using for each of those as well. So and you've got I think 300 words, so you can expand on that as well, and feel free to use dot points as well if you wanted to even list out the first one that you're talking about and then the second one, and list out underneath how exactly you're creating that impact. Amazing. Yes, also the key thing with that question is really it's thinking about, and we'll talk about outcomes next. This question's really about that enduring long-term impact. So just keep that in mind, that they're really looking further down the track. But perfect.
Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Yeah, can I have a go?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Okay, so this project aligns with Ingrained's impact area of social cohesion once again, and will have a positive and enduring impact by restoring regional non-road train services in the Northern Rivers. Our company will be promoting and supporting cooperation throughout the region with communities, local councils, and other levels of government to promote greater inclusion and connectivity. We will develop opportunities and capabilities far beyond what we currently are experiencing by increasing social cohesion with greater access to accessible transport that can allow the elderly, the youth, those with disabilities and everyone else to be able to move freely throughout the region between Lismore and the top of Byron Shire, with access to the coast and bringing business to struggling towns like Lismore.
Great. I think that was perfect. Yeah, I think you really addressed that impact area and used a lot of their keywords that they're asking for. So I think that was really good.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was a good hint.
Yeah. I don't know if Jodie wants to jump in with any more hints as an assessor, but maybe that's not allowed.
No, they're great. They're both really good. So I think that was really good feedback for Chris there. So perfect. And yeah, that was a really strong statement there, Lydia.
Okay. So we just touched on this around outcomes and measurables, which is really about mapping out and presenting the impact that you're going to have in your project. So you could probably do this in the planning as well, and you probably should, sorry, but really think about early on how you're going to, what your project is seeking to achieve and how you're going to measure that impact. And it's important to start measuring that impact right from the start of your project so that you have got data and things that you can report on at the end. So start to think about what information can you capture at the beginning, during the project and after your project to show that you've made that difference, which you said you would. And how can you collect this information along the way? Is it through surveys or other data collection methods? I'll also just mention here the difference between qualitative and quantitative data. So qualitative is really that the data that sort of you often get from surveys and things like that around like increased social connection and feedback from your participants about how it made them feel and the changes that it had in their life. Whereas quantitative data is really that sort of those numbers that can prove. So whether that's proving that 20% of your participants reported increased social connection. I think you could do a whole another hour and a half session on outcomes and measurables, but yeah, it's good to start thinking about it early. And the applications will really prompt you to consider that so that you're starting to measure against your outcomes right from the start of a funded project. So we might actually just have a quick, now that because we have such a small group, it might be good to just open it up for a quick discussion and just share, if you'd like to, what outcomes you'll measure in your project and how you're going to measure them. And we might be able to get some different ideas from each other. Has anyone thought about this already and would like to share? You can pop it in the chat box if you'd like, if you don't want to talk. Or if you have a question around that, maybe we can put it to the group too.
I'll ask a question. We're thinking of putting in kind of a 2 or 3 stage process of workshops, with the first being kind of gathering the community catalysts. So you could sort of use the information from them to, then they would be inviting other members of the community into the second process. So you could kind of be measuring impact through numbers that you're getting, as well as just through more qualitative data at the end of a workshop, getting people to fill in a feedback form, something like that. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you'd have both the numbers of who's attending, whether they're attending more than one session, and if they're coming through, you're running a series of workshops, whether they're attending all of them, so you have that retainment. And then also, with participant surveys, you're getting that qualitative, what people are reporting that they're learning and how they're feeling in terms of tools and skills and things like that. And I think it's a good idea, like Jodie's done in this session, is ask that early question at the start of the whole process or at the start of each workshop, like what's your level of, I don't know, feelings of resilience or community connection, whatever it is at the beginning, and then ask them again to fill that out at the end again, so you can sort of track them through. But yeah, that sounds perfect.
Great, thank you.
And popped in the chat box, collecting and recording the number of women attending the project, and that participants gain ongoing employment, which is perfect. Yeah, you're really easily measuring that that impact there. That's great, Anne. Anyone else like to share or have a question around that?
Yes, I suppose we'll know by the number of people using the service. And yeah, that's an exciting concept, having lots of people not driving their cars and actually using the service. And we'd be promoting as many different ideas about bringing groups of people using it, like, there'd be a lot of different aspects, that the merchandise side of it, inspiring people to come along and, just be part of this community-based initiative. So
yes, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and I would just think about what you'll be able to measure at different points. So what you'll be able to measure right after you've delivered maybe the 12-month funded program, and then what you'll be measuring. You can explain what you'll be measuring going forward as well. So thinking about when you'll have to be reporting to each program.
yeah,
Okay.
right. As far as the grants are concerned, yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just a quick note on terminology, because often sometimes all the different applications can use different terms when it comes to speaking about outcomes and impact. So if they're asking you about outputs, they're really asking you to identify the activities that your project will create. These are the things that you're going to be doing. So might be 5 workshops or 2 train services back on tracks, 1,000 trees planted, etc. And then when they're asking for outcomes, that's really the changes that your project will create. Sometimes outcomes and impact are sort of used interchangeably. Sometimes outcomes will sort of more directly speak to short to medium term changes, whereas impact will often be the longer term changes further down the track. But sometimes people will just use them interchangeably as well. So it's sort of a trickier one, but they'll give you a sort of guidance in the way that they've framed the question. And then measurables are those things that you're measuring. So they're your outcomes framed as things you're measuring. So number of people attending, number of women employed after going through the program. So hopefully that's useful when you're looking at all these different applications. Just some tips on writing your budget. Make sure when you're reviewing the guidelines and as you're filling out the budget section of the application, that you're really sticking to what the guidelines say are eligible costs. Some things can and can't be included in the budget. Some programs will stipulate that you can't include ongoing staff wages, only wages specific to a project. Sometimes you can make equipment purchases, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can also include a 10% admin cost, which is handy to cover things like insurance and reporting, but just check the guidelines, because sometimes they'll say that it can be included and other times it can't be. And then when you're filling out your budget, just make sure you're adding in some extra detail. So you're breaking it down, each line item down a bit, just to show that you've really thought about it and actually calculated the cost there. You're not sort of just pulling numbers out of the air. So here I've got some facilitators fees. The total's $8,000, but I've broken it down to show that $8,000 covers 2 facilitators for 8 weeks at $500 each per weekly session. So you just want to make sure that you can justify each of the budget lines and prove that it's connected to the project and to your impact. Sometimes there'll also be space beneath the budget section to provide extra notes. So that's another spot that you can provide extra detail. In the Ingrained application, there's the question about funding project sustainability. So that's a good spot to explain some of your more unique line items, I guess. And you could say, if you're purchasing a bunch of equipment or you've got some staff training in there, that those initial costs under this project are going to have ongoing impact as you deliver the same project in future years. You're going to keep using that impact. That team member is going to be trained up. They won't need to be trained again next year. So just think about where you can include that additional information, particularly the government applications. They'll sort of directly ask you, how does this project represent value for money? And that's where you can see those things.
Can I just ask if you can include auspicing costs in your budget?
Sometimes they will directly say that you can't, but sometimes that 10% admin fee is a good spot to have that in there. Yeah. So just double check. Sometimes they won't mention it all, so you can contact the funder and ask, can I include this in there? But yeah, sometimes they will say expenses related to the application can't be covered. So yeah, just check the guidelines.
And well, Joe's here, so the Ingrained allow for that.
Yeah, we don't tend to cover any administrative costs relating to grant applications, and we don't tend to fund any fixed overheads, which is what Nat was mentioning before. But the facilitator type fee, more that contractor consultant, are things that we definitely have funded in the past.
Great, thank you.
Don't try to squeeze a big project into a small grant. That's why it's a good idea to nut out your project before you start looking for grants, because there is that temptation to really go, oh, we've got $10,000 that we could get, and maybe we could deliver 20 workshops within that. You don't want to overstretch yourself, and you also don't want funders to then have unrealistic expectations of what your project costs and what it actually costs to create impact. But yeah, I know there is that temptation to try and make the funders feel like they're getting the best bang for their buck, but there's also a lot of burnout and overwork for not much money in the not-for-profit space. So I think it's a really good one to be realistic about your budgets and don't feel like you need to squeeze more into a small grant than you need to. You can also obviously fund projects with multiple funders, and sometimes in a grant application there'll be that section to provide any income that you're either have confirmed or unconfirmed. So you might have that you've already got $10,000 from a private donor, you've got another $10,000 from a fundraising event, and then you're hoping to get this grant as well to meet the overall budget that you've determined. Just note which ones are obviously confirmed and unconfirmed when you're looking at that income as well. Okay, so that's writing.
Looks like Kay might have a question.
Oh yes, yeah.
Or Kimberly, sorry.
Yeah, so my question is, if you've got like a big project, but you want to break it down into sort of stages or segments and stuff like that, could you target your application to that particular thing that you're hoping to get funded for?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and you would just say this is part of a overall wider project, but funding from Ingrained or FRRR, whoever it is, will fund just this 5-week program.
Yeah,
of that
cool.
program, whatever it is. But yeah, and I think funders actually look quite favourable on that. That they like to know that it's part of this bigger overall thing, and then you've just targeted this one little activity.
Yeah, cool.
So that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so to summarize the writing part of the process, really just making sure that you're reading the guidelines and all the full application before you start diving in and answering the questions. Start working out, drafting your responses, creating your dot points, and even keeping those dot points in your final answers. That's totally fine. Weaving in words from the guidelines and from the funding website to help those assessors really tick those boxes. Think about your outcomes and measurables, and then create a realistic budget. That was probably quite a big section of the presentation. Was there any questions from all of that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, just wondering, when you're talking about the evidence, do you need to provide like a reference in the writing or a reference list at the end so that it can be checked, or just mentioning it?
Yeah, I would just mention it. I mean, obviously, the word limits are usually quite tight, so I would just mention it in brief, either in brackets, or you can say sort of, you know, the Australian government framework for teen mental health 2022 states that blah 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 blah. Or you could mention it at the start of the sentence, or you could just pop it into a bracket. I'd keep it in there rather than trying to do sort of footnotes at the end of a response, just because there's never really much formatting ability in the grant applications. So yeah, just put it into brackets.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We're almost to the tail end, so we've just got the one last little part of our process, which is reviewing. So I just wanted to highlight this to try. I know obviously often people working in this space are very pressed for time, but try and leave enough time to review your full application, reading through the application before you submit to see if you've answered each question correctly. Are there any sections where you've repeated yourself? Have you said one thing in one question and then said it in another question where it doesn't really need to be? Can you simplify your language or be more concise at any points? Have you weaved in those key words and language that the guidelines are using to strengthen your responses? And have you got attached all the required supporting material? If you can, it's even better to get some fresh eyes on your application to get their feedback too. Or if you've got time, sort of draft it all, get it ready to submit, and then give yourself a day or two to step away from it and then come back to it and read it again and see how you feel about it. Just a super quick example, I've got an original up the top, and then when I've gone through to edit it, I've just found a few small bits where I can really strengthen it. So originally I've got the Regenerative Floodplains Project hopes to improve the resilience of landscapes. But as I'm reading it, I can realize that actually if I can strengthen it by being, I guess, quite confident and assertive that it will improve the resilience of landscapes. So that's a nice little way, like really just be confident in your statements that no, this is going to have impact and this is why and how. I've just also stripped out some words just to make it a bit more punchy, rather than with the objective of reducing the risk of future flooding. I've just taken that out. So it goes, the landscapes across the northern rivers, reducing the risk of future flooding, et cetera, et cetera. And then I've taken out that last little line because I've kind of already said it at the top around improving the resilience of landscapes. So just making it short and punchy and seeing where you can strip it back and say things a bit more straightforward.
And I just want to say on that is such an awesome example. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that as a person who assesses grants, you are often looking at 50 or 60 applications. And so the clearer and the more punchy that you can be in your language really helps the assessor be very clear and focused and not have to try to interpret your writing and the bits and pieces that are important. So this is such a great example of that and just getting very concise. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jody. Okay, and then also when you're reviewing, look back at the guidelines, and often at the end of the guidelines, they'll sort of tell you what the assessors are going to be marking applications against. So that's a good section to go back to and see what questions that assessors will be marking you against, and ask yourself whether you've addressed that. So these are the ones for the Ingrained application. So if we look at impact, does the project address an area of need within the Northern Rivers? So you can look back and go, have I provided evidence that this is a local problem here to the Northern Rivers? Does the project address one or more of the key impact areas? So that's that question that we did together around the funding focus. So have I really answered that question really well and clearly so that the assessors can tick that off? So yeah, you can just go through those, and it's a good way to check back and see if you've answered every question correctly. So just to summarize all of the sections we went through. So in our planning, we really want to think about what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and make sure we've got evidence to back it all up, and that we've planned out our process, who's going to be involved, our project plan, and we've got all the documents and information that we need all in the one place, so that when we find an application to apply for, we've got it all there ready to go. For the writing, I would just say the main point is don't worry about trying to be a creative writer and using fancy language. They really just want to read clear and concise answers and use dot points to make it even clearer if you'd like to. And then when you're reviewing it, just keep in mind that you want to help the assessors tick the boxes. So have you really answered all the questions clearly and put your case forward really clearly? And then just some final tips. If your grant application isn't successful, when you can, make sure you request feedback and see if the foundation or the funder can give you any feedback on where you might have been able to improve on your application in future rounds. Keep working on how you explain your project. Keep looking for more evidence and more research, and just don't give up, because the funders are always looking for something specific. So even if one funder you don't get across the line with them, you might be able to find another funder who is really passionate about your issue. So just keep trying, and it does get easier the more you apply for, because you've got all of the information there already. So every time you do a new application, you're kind of just tweaking it to meet each of the organization's objectives. So that's it. Any questions now that we're at the end, just in time? I'll stop sharing this so we can see faces.
Perfectly timed, Nat.
Not a question, but thank you very much. It's been really helpful, and it's given me a little more confidence to try and, apply for grants.
Amazing. I'm glad it was useful.
Yes, I'll echo that, Nat.
Yes, it was
Thank you.
extremely useful.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Yeah. My main problem is that we do have a very big project, and to actually get it down into bite-sized chunks is a real challenge. So we're just working on what can be applied for.
Yes.
So maybe I'll talk to you later, Jodie. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Lydia. Let's talk about what that looks like for your project. I can imagine it's multi-year, multifaceted, so we can definitely have a look at that. It's really good to hear that feedback. I'd love you to answer that question again about how confident are you in your grant writing post the session and the conversation that we've just had, because this is a pilot opportunity that we've kind of undertaken here with Nat in terms of offering this grant writing session. So we want to understand whether it's valuable and you think it's actually helping to improve your confidence in grant writing, so that we think about how we do this more often in the community and how we look at the evolution of that. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to Nat for today. I think you really bring a lot of skill and expertise to the conversation, Nat, and we're really grateful to have you on board partnering on this piece of work with us.
Thanks, Jodie. It's been great. I want to hear about everyone's project. I'm curious.
Yeah, exactly. I know, exactly. I wonder if there's any, if there's no questions specifically about grant writing per se, if there are any questions relating to Ingrained and the current grants program that's open that you didn't get a chance to answer a question about previously that I could help with now. Or we can certainly make a time to catch up one-on-one, Lydia. It sounds like that might be best for you and I. Oh, I love that. Confidence has grown to a 4. Very good.
So when I was doing the exercise, the writing exercise, I very quickly, I feel like it covers all of the conditions, all the impact areas, but maybe it fitted into the climate regeneration resilience one. But then when you're using the term regeneration, most people mean it in relationship to land rather than in relationship to the community and taking a bigger living systems view. So then I thought, well, maybe it fits into social innovation in terms of, getting communities engaged in that, seeing themselves as part of a whole living system. So it's kind of like, how much play is there in the system in terms of understanding the concepts? How much do I need to define what I mean by regeneration versus maybe what you mean, or,
It's a good question. I think that I'm very new to the Ingrained Foundation, and I think one of the opportunities that we've got is to simplify the language by what we mean across those 4 impact areas to make it easy for partners like yourself who are looking to do a good job, and how might we be able to make it less complicated for people. So when you're answering that question, I suppose the reason why I was giving that guidance of just pick the thing that feels most connected straight up rather than overthinking it. Like if you really feel like, regen is sitting in that kind of environmental space, go down that path. And as Nat said, then talk about however it does cover these 4 other areas in this way. I think when we think about regenerative regen, we are thinking about both the social and the environmental going hand in hand, because I think that is really about regeneration. But you're right, there's a person that we partnered with last year who started off with the project actually being called Regen Northern Rivers, and then realised very quickly that when she was out doing community consultation, every time that was mentioned, it went into a space of environmental discussion rather than community systems as you're discussing. And so she intentionally renamed her entire project and piece of work and the way she went to community into, and I think it's called Imagine or Reimagine Northern Rivers now.
Yeah.
Carmen. You probably know Carmen. Yeah. So I think that is sort of the tension point that always exists around that term regen, that we've gone, that the people's understanding kind of takes them into that environmental piece. We can, when we look at the grants overall, we are kind of looking at them and then we are categorizing them in the background anyway. So we can read through yours and have a look, and if it's sitting in, if you've put the strength in environment, but we look at it and go, actually, this feels more social cohesion, we will move it so that it gets assessed against other organisations that are operating in the space of social cohesion.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Can I ask, are you looking, when you say you categorise them, are you looking for a balance so that your monies actually fund all 4 of those impact areas?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Deb. It's actually one of the things that we kind of grapple with a little bit, because we don't necessarily get equal applicants across all of those impact areas. So we would like to, we will always go with scoring first. That's the first pass. The best case imaginable is that we have equal representation across all impact areas, and we have equal representation across all of the 7 LGAs in the Northern Rivers as well. But traditionally, we don't have as many applications in environment, for instance, or systems change. We have more in social cohesion or capacity building. So we tend to look at, have we got sort of proportional representation versus how many applicants we have across those areas. So I don't think it's a perfect science. First, we look at where is the money to be spent that has the greatest impact. That's the kind of first pass, and then we try to balance it up across all of those other factors.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Pleasure. Are there any other questions from an Ingrained perspective or a grant writing perspective, given you've got Nat's, the Brains Trust here at the moment as well? Feel free to ask her a question.
Can we come back to you anytime along the process, Jody? Or
Absolutely. So the best way to do that
you.
is just through the hello@ingrainedfoundation.com.au email. Send me a note and I'll make a time to have a phone conversation with you. And certainly, where we can, we'd like to offer help. Without giving you all the answers, but certainly directing you, popping you in the right direction for sure.
Yep. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, it's 11:32. So I think Nat's done a phenomenal job getting through a lot of content and a lot of valuable information in a relatively short period of time. And it's good to see you've all stayed engaged in the process as well. So thanks so much for making the time. And I look forward to seeing all of the applications and the amazing work that you're all doing in the community as well. So thank you for all that you contribute.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Jody and Nat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.